My name is Franchon Dickinson. Some of you know me as Franchon Beeks. I am the new Director of Building and Housing, and I welcome you and I thank you for attending this meeting so that we can have an opportunity to clarify any questions you have around CDBG funding as it relates to ESG, public services, or public facilities and improvements. Also, and specifically because it's been a slight change in process as we make corrective action to, in response to HUD's request, we thought it was very important that we just do this in public and make sure that we can identify eligible activities, help you identify eligible activities and projects that would be eligible for funding, answer questions, help you decide if it's worth your applying for the funds, etc. Because it does take some man hours to actually apply for the funding, and we have a level of accountability that all organizations who have not dealt with federal funds may or may not be used to. So we wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that we answer any of your concerns and any of your questions. We do have a microphone so that everyone can hear your questions at the end. This is specifically for the RFPs that went out, the recent requests for proposals, applications that went out for ESG services, public facilities, and public improvements. If you are here specifically to receive home dollars on any new home development, that RFP has not gone out yet. We apologize, we are later than we anticipated to get that completed for you and get that out, but that will be, we anticipate it's in its final review with law. So we anticipate that to come out soon as well. So if you're a developer and you're not a CHODO and you're interested in home dollars for home development, we will make sure you let us know specifically so we can send you those RFPs as well. All right? Does anybody have anything they want to announce or say before we get started? Of course, and of course my colleague, I should thank our host, thank you, Public Works, Aaron Johnson, colleague who's always supportive, thank you. And my other colleague, Communications, is here as well, Moment, and his staff, thank you. And I should thank my staff, look at me. I have Ruth Rivera and Dora Crenshaw. She's new to our department temporarily, so they are assisting me. So if you need to make sure I get information, please see one of them. I thought I would also take the moment to let everybody know that Dauphin County Community of Economic Development has reached out to me and asked that they are also accepting applications for CDBG funding opportunities in public facilities and public services, and the applications are due November 8th at 4:30. November 8th at 4:30. So that's for their 2020 fiscal year, starting July 1st, 2020. So the website, it's right on their website under Dauphin County Department of Community Economic Development, CDBG 2020 funds, all right? So they asked that we let you know about that. So if you are applying for funds with our project and you need some other funds to leverage it, etc., you might want to consider that. Because we need to say that CDBG funds should not be 100% of your funding source. So it's very important that you diversify your funding sources, okay? All right, we're about to get started. First thing is, I've given out a handout that I thought was very important because there seems to be a lot of concerns and questions about what constitutes eligibility of CDBG funds. So we made what we call a little cheat sheet rather than give you the entire regulation. The that handout that you received, it shows you public facilities and improvement projects that are eligible. It talks about other projects using the national objective. Tells you what real estate and housing projects are eligible. It has a list of other what they call CDBG eligible projects, and then it has in the back ineligible CDBG projects. It also briefly speaks about some basic reporting. So I wanted to make sure you all had that as a tool, whether you're applying for city funds, city CDBG funds, or the county or whomever, that you have that as a tool to guide you. So the first RFP we're going to start with is ESG, Emergency Solutions Grant. The application kit is going out. If you don't have a copy, it's in the back as well if you need it. Most of you were emailed or shared electronically. And ESG is specifically for, I'm sorry, I'm drowning. Here we go. I don't want to make this mic for a moment. ESG funds are specifically for, primary objectives are to engage homeless individuals and families living on the street, improve the number of quality of emergency shelters for homeless individuals and families, help operate these shelters, provide essential services to shelter residents, rapidly rehouse homeless individuals and families, and prevent families and individuals from becoming homeless. Currently, the city of Harrisburg works with the organization CASH to provide these services. If your organization, you believe services any of these or may be eligible for this, you are welcome also to apply for ESG or to seek partnership with CASH to become a part of the coalition. Eligible activities include street outreach, emergency shelter, again, homeless prevention and rapid rehousing, and HMIS data collection, which is our homeless management information systems. That is the only thing we can fund with ESG. I'm doing that one first because it's pretty self-explanatory, and most of you are not here for that reason, but it's pretty self-explanatory, and that is it. Somebody asked me in a previous public meeting if we were trying to identify if they offered some services in this area. So I hope that this answers that question. I don't recall who it was, but I hope it answers your concerns and questions. The application is pretty much, we tried to simplify it, but we also tried to capture, we have to identify the national objective. You're going to see this throughout all the applications that we discussed tonight. We have to begin to identify the objective that we're meeting to show that it's an eligible service for that funding prior to us awarding the application. Are there any prospective ESG applicants who have questions about this? I thought that would be the easiest one, so we're going to move past that. The next one we're going to do, which most of you are probably here for, is the Public Services RFP application. As it states that we are accepting applications for the 2019 fiscal year, which begins October 1 through September 30th of 2020. Even if you're once awarded, even if your contract is not executed, you will be allowed to begin, once awarded October 1, you'll be able to submit based on that fiscal year date. Now, let's talk about public service. If you look on the application, about page 3, we try to be very clear. We try to be very clear this year to let you know prior to applying what was eligible, because we found in reviewing our applications that some of you submitted already earlier this year, that we did not capture the information to identify that you actually had a public service eligible activity or project or program, okay? So this time, we took a different approach and said, hey, we want to give you all the information in the RFP application ahead of time, so you're very much aware, again, if it's worth you applying, if if you want to put the manpower in applying, if your project or program is actually eligible. And welcome, Mayor, thank you for coming through. And hopefully that the applications you submit will have eligible activities and programs, because we found that previously they did not. So we want to talk about this just a little bit. The project and activity qualifications, as you see listed in the bullets, it must principally benefit persons living in households with an annual income below the 80% AMI. We can't just say that. We have to be able to prove it, and we have to be able to collect that beneficiary data so that we can report it to HUD properly. These are the kinds of things that we're going to be looking for even prior to paying an invoice and prior to even awarding it. It must take place within the city of Harrisburg. Your project or program must be within the city proper. It must benefit the residents of the city of Harrisburg. This is the part that we're struggling with, making sure everybody is aware of. It must either be a new service or a quantitative increase in the level of existing service above that which has been provided by the organization in the 12 calendar months before the submission of the application. This is where we're struggling with getting good applications. You must be able in your application, I can't emphasize it enough, you have to pass that basic criteria that we just listed before we will even get your application to the scoring process. So, in your application, you have opportunities to show and demonstrate via narrative and supporting documentation. How is this a new program or project? Or what is the quantitative increase? So, for example, if you service 30 children, last year you have a youth program and you service 30 children, and you're applying for the funds for the same program, you must demonstrate how this funding is going to give you a quantitative increase from that service 12 months ago. You must. This is unfortunately, this is not a subjective matter on this question. This is what HUD requires to be able to properly award and spend public service dollars. Yes.
All right, I'm confused.
Speak. Can you speak in the mic?
Les Ford, the Heinz Center, and I'm confused already. Let me take the easy part. Let's pick a number. If I serviced 50 people last year, you're indicating that I have to show specific plans to raise that, let's say, to 60, 65, something like that, specific plans. But are you saying, let me clarify, are you saying that I just need that in my narrative, or I need specific individuals that I'm going to in the future serve?
You may not have that individual beneficiary information at the time, so you have to be able to demonstrate it in your narrative. So, because what's going to happen is you can use charts, you can use a budget, you can use a past year's budget versus this year and show those numbers. You can use a data sheet to show that, hey, in 2018, we serviced 50. This additional funds, we anticipate to be able to serve 75.
Okay.
Okay?
That answers part of it. Now, can I use prior trending to demonstrate that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can use prior trending, but you have to show that these funds will assist you in that. Exactly.
Okay. And point number 2, there was a question about 2015, the 2015 baseline year. Is that because that was the beginning of the last cycle 5-year cycle for HUD?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's also when the new guidance came out. There was a guidance change in 2015.
All right, so if I show trending from 2015 and project that out to next year, that should be sufficient?
That should be sufficient, correct. All right. Or of course, yes.
Just as a point of clarification, so is that short-term or long-term? Because let's say that you're doing a senior program and you have regularly 30, 40 people coming in. You decide to do a health conference, something that's going to target that population. So at that given time, you're going to have an increase.
Is that health conference a new conference, something that you didn't provide last year?
Yeah.
Then you can list that as a new service.
Okay, and so you would still have all of the people that attended that as, because even though they've been coming to something else, now they're coming to something different.
Because it's new,
So
yes?
that now they're new.
The conference is a new
And the
conference.
participants are all new in addition to the,
Right, in addition to,
Okay.
but you provide the new, if you apply for $5,000 so that you can have this conference for this same population,
right,
that's a new service that you're something new, a new program or project or service you're providing to that population.
right. So the candidates that were already coming to your other sessions that would normally be repeat would not be repeat because now they're in a new session.
Correct, on that project. That
Right.
project,
Okay.
that conference is a new service.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Anybody else? Keep asking me, because how you doing?
I can talk pretty loud.
Okay.
What my concern, we need to excuse me up here for, what my
Oh, I'm
concern-
sorry, I apologize. Can you take her the mic then, Ruth, please?
I'm sorry, Miss Juanita, we're recording.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I don't know that we're gonna be able to show.
Oh, okay.
No.
She's coming up.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out how to get there. Taking a long way.
That's all right, we're fine.
What
And
my-
please state your name for us, Ms. Juanita.
Juanita Edrington Grant, Cram Incorporated.
Thank you.
What my concern is, I have 12 different program services, okay? My concern is, number one, I think that your logic model that's in the application is a good tool to use because you should be able to demonstrate the amount of services that you provide, all the activities. But what my question is, aren't you looking at unduplicated client? In other words, give me an example. I have 40 clients that took the computer literacy class, okay? Those same 40 clients did resumes in the employment assistant class. Those same 40 clients completed the family reunification services. So those are not new clients.
Now, I didn't say new clients, new service. Maybe you're providing a new service to those same 40 clients.
So so my question is, you're not going to say these are duplicated individuals when I tell you I got 40 that did this and that same 40 did
If you're demonstrating a new service to that clientele. A
okay,
new service or program to that clientele.
the same 40.
It doesn't, if you're providing, because the only other difference is now if you're not providing any new services, then you gotta show me an increase to those 40 clients.
Okay, I understand that part.
Right.
But I just don't want to come back and say, well, you're serving the same 40 clients.
If
but-
it's a
but
new
different.
program or service, then it's still eligible for those same clients.
Okay,
If it's not a new service to the same clients, you must show a quantitative increase. So I would expect that you'd be able to demonstrate that that's gonna go from 40 to 60 clients or something to that, exactly.
okay, all right.
Okay, does that help everybody?
No, I won't.
Yes, sir.
How you doing? My name is Joshua Barker.
Hi.
I want to know if there were any restrictions for religious institutions providing services in the community.
I don't believe so. I would have to actually clarify that and check that one more time. Let me make sure I check that. I don't want to say on record until I verify that. I have not seen anything that says it's an ineligible activity. Again, if you're providing the service, if you meet those criteria we just mentioned, and also it tells you you must provide some of these eligible Eligible activities include employment, training, or, give me an idea what you mean, what you thinking of doing, what are you doing? I don't understand.
I don't really want to say it because,
I understand, that's fine.
but, it's something innovative that would bring a new to the.
Okay. You have an application with you. On page 3, it tells you specifically the eligible activities. And I'm going to go through them really quickly for everybody, in case you don't have a paper copy. Employment, including training and placement, crime prevention, child care, drug and alcohol abuse prevention and treatment, fair housing counseling, welfares, but excluding the provision of income payments as identified in 24 CFR, senior care, recreational needs, health and wellness, education, energy conservation, and home buyer down payment assistance. That's a brief list, but there's a full list online on HUD.gov. All right, there's a full list. In fact, I'm pretty certain, I can almost say with certainty, it doesn't matter if it's a religious organization, if it's a nonprofit, and meets the eligible activities and the criteria.
Your primary agency for the homeless and emergency shelter, what is that?
Cash.
And that stands for?
Coalition, Capital Area Coalition Homelessness. Thank you. I struggle with that. I should know it. I look at it every day. Thanks to Brian. But yes.
I'm trying to clarify.
Thank you.
Is that principally driven by religious organizations, or is that secular?
Well,
Okay, I was
no,
just curious.
it's not. No.
While I'm at the mic now, we're talking about the first line of programming, which was defined by the roughly $100,000 allocation by the city. Has that been fixed thus far? Was my understanding?
Fixed thus far.
Is that the threshold?
Yes.
If we are interested in applying under that set of programs, that number has been fixed by both the city and the federal government?
Has been fixed by the city and federal government. The federal government did not fix a number. I don't understand your question.
All right, let me back up a little bit. In prior years, the rough number has been about $1.9 million.
That's CDBG overall.
Correct.
Yes.
Overall. And at city council meeting this year, you all gave very definitive numbers relative to that overall number.
Mm-hmm.
You also made the statement that this category of programs would be rather limited compared to other years because you were moving dollars from, help me out here.
Okay, right. What we did was we properly identified them. But previously, you get about $300,000 or about $300,000 to $400,000 to use for public services.
Right.
But historically, what we've been doing is we've had public service nonprofits competing for the same funds with public facilities dollars, development dollars, and we've been taking that out of the same pot. So based on the trend on actual public services that were provided, we've earmarked $100,000 and took the $407,000 and put it under public facilities so that a nonprofit does not have, a nonprofit who wants to provide programs or programmatic services that meets public services is not competing with someone who wants to fix a building. They should be separated. They should not have been in the same pot, so to speak. So for example, the best example I can give you is last year, $100,000 of the public services dollars went to $100,000 went to Habitat. Habitat's not providing a public service. That money is public facilities dollars. So the only thing we've done this year is we've separated them and earmarked them public service dollars, and this is what makes it eligible so that your application requires different beneficiary information than the public facilities and public improvement.
Okay. Given that we have a very short time frame here to get the applications in, I just want to drive this point home. You used the term earmarked. Now, is that earmarked by your shop, by the administration and city council? Is that earmarked by your...
That has already been earmarked, approved by council as well. That's correct, okay? And what we also learned is that the average request with public services was running between $5,000 and $25,000. Those larger requests typically had to do with public facilities and public improvements. They didn't, or development or rehab jobs, work. It didn't have much to do with public services. That was the average. I'm giving you an average. I'm not talking a specific client, a specific subrecipient. So that's how we've come up with that. Does anybody have any concern or question around if their project or something they're thinking about funding meets the criteria of public service? And need some clarification on that, because the goal of this meeting was to be able to talk about the application, to talk about the eligibility, to identify in the application. We put some things in it that you may not have seen before. For example, on section 2, we have an eligible activity on the application. We actually have an eligible activity box where you let us know who's benefiting, who's the low to moderate income persons that are benefiting. We've never had that in here before. That's important that we identify that in the front of the process instead of trying to figure it out at the end and possibly put the funds at risk. Does everybody see that? Or anybody have any concerns or questions about it? It's actually, if you look at your RFP, where the application begins after the RFP documents is section 2, page 2 of the application. It doesn't have, it's not numbered at the bottom. It says section 2, activity eligibility at the top. It's like a little gray box. It's right after the RFP detail. We are asking, as part of your application, that you identify the beneficiary information at the beginning to even be considered for the dollars. Because again, we found we were finding that HUD kept giving us findings because we were not identifying that in our public service applicants prior to award. Okay, so this is a corrective action that we're making to show HUD that we're actually using the funds for what it's supposed to be used for. Okay? So when you are doing your application, most of us in this city already are going to benefit a low to moderate income population. Some of us are going to do a limited clientele. If you have seniors, if you do battered or abused children, if you do homeless people, severely disabled adults, that's considered limited clientele. We're identifying that up front because that helps us report to HUD properly how we're spending the money. Okay? Also, after that, you have your client demographics. We wanted to make sure that was part of the application so that there is an expectation that this is the kind of information that we need. Some previous subrecipients, when we start asking for this information, did not have it, had to gather it. We want to make sure all applicants who are applying for this are very clear on what kind of reporting and what kind of beneficiary information is going to be required. Yes, ma'am.
I think my question is related.
Sorry, can you state your name if you don't mind?
Rhonda Mays, Fair Housing Council.
Thank you, hi.
Hi. So you had mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that you were basing the grant awards on, or evaluating proposals based on 80% of AMI. We're looking at it.
It says up to.
Up to.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we're looking at an expansion of services that's based on LMI. So could you give us I'm not familiar with the ranges for AMI.
I don't have the salary range in front of me. I can look it up for you really quickly. But 30%, less than 30% of the income median in the area is considered extremely LMI. But it's a chart. You have this application?
Yes, I don't have it with me.
Okay. It's on this page. It gives you some idea on what those ranges are. I just don't have the dollar amount for households with me. I can pull it up though.
Okay.
Okay. But we can get that, and it changes every year. HUD sends it out every year, and we can always provide that to you by email. I just don't know off the top of my head family of one, I think it's 20-something thousand dollars. I'm not sure though, I can't quote me on that right now, but I'll get that for you. And also, put a note that when we send it out, to send the link for the LMI income, family size. Matter of fact, it's on one of our applications. Ruth, it should be on one of our applications. All right? On page 3 of the same application, we're doing public services right now. We're talking about public services. You have service delivery. We're asking that you tell us up front what specific activities your organization intends to undertake. These are some broad categories. You can list it if you don't feel as though what you're providing falls within those categories. Also, there was questions about providing services in the city versus and having clients who live outside of the city. You can answer that here as well. It says, do you, will people living outside the city be directly serviced under this activity? So, you have to provide the services in the city of Harrisburg, city proper, but we recognize that some of you will have clients that don't live in the city. Here, let me see. This answers your question, Mr. Ford. We have a narrative piece there. So whatever you don't think is captured, you have an opportunity in narrative to summarize a few things. We want to know about your capacity. We want to know, again, how is this meeting the public service requirement being a new or quantitative increase in services, okay? All right, to answer that question earlier, one household, oh, it's actually way more than I thought. I don't know where I got 26,000.
That's the 80%.
Oh, that's the 80%, okay. This is for the leg grant. Is this on 80%? Okay, now, this doesn't have all of the percentages. Like I said, less than 30%, but this is based on 80% of 80% LMI. One household, 45,000 is the maximum. Okay, two household size, the maximum is 51,950. So that's at 80. That's at the 80%. That's not even at the 30%. So you have a lot of range in economic eligibility. Okay, but it has to be less than 80% of the LMI. So if you're serving a client who has one member household, they can actually make up to $45,450 and be eligible for services. All right? Everybody okay with that? Understand? Thank you.
That's all based on self-disclosure, correct?
It depends on how your program is set up. You set up your parameters, because one of the things HUD does require is that I look at your policies and procedures when we do a quarterly review. If whatever your policies and procedures are and how you, whether you self-certify or whatever, that's up to you. We can't determine that, okay? Because I know that I received a lot of self-certifications. So you don't just disclose it to them. These are federal dollars, etc. Okay? And then you have other things about monitoring your activities and accountability, etc. Then you have performance measures in Section 5. What is your goal? Are you creating sustainable living environment? Are you providing decent, affordable housing? Are you creating economic opportunities? Or is it affordability that you're addressing? Sustainability, etc. The most important part of this application is this line item budget for the dollars that you're going to spend, that you're asking for from our office. When your contract is developed, if awarded, your contract developed, this budget, we're going to negotiate a budget, just like HUD treats me. You get awarded, we're going to look at your budget, we're going to negotiate your budget, and we're going to get a final approved budget. That's what we're paying, nothing else. Your final approved budget will be attached, if awarded, to your contract. There will not be these vague scopes of services. We're going to have a scope of service, and then we're going to have your budget to support it. I don't need your whole overall operational budget. All I need is a budget based on how you're expending the awarded funds. Now, if you are asking for funds that has a project, for example, your project is $100,000 or your program is $100,000, and you're asking us for 10, then in your narrative or somewhere I think we have a question. How are you going to, if you're only awarded this 10, how are you going, can this program take place if awarded? How are you going to get the rest of that money? Because we got to make sure that you're not asking for 100 and we are only funding that you're secure. You're asking for 10 and then you don't get the 90. You're never going to get this all spent in a year that's required. Yes, ma'am.
As far as the budget, are administrative costs, overhead, personnel, are those allowable expenses, or would you pretty much cut that?
Nope, I didn't cut anything. It's the rule.
Okay.
It has to be associated with the direct services. You can pay salaries, etc. if it's actually a direct service. We don't pay indirect costs and just overall administrative costs with public service dollars. Okay? So, for example, if you have a staff member who's delivering the workshop, their salary can be included. But it can't just be the ED, whatever. It could be a small percentage of the ED if they're doing oversight and monitoring, but you got to show that to that project or program.
So you can prorate that based on time and effort for that program?
I don't like to use the word prorate, but yes, but you have to be prepared to be able to justify or demonstrate or have timesheets or something to show that that individual spent 5% or whatever directly on that service. Okay? All right? It has to, salaries and personnel and salaries have to be direct to that public service that you're providing. Yes?
In the past, you could do an amendment to your budget.
Can you come up,
Oh,
please?
I was using my
It's
second.
all right.
In the past, you could do an amendment to your budget. Can you still do that?
That's possible, but we expect by doing it and making going through the budget prior to the contract and getting an approved budget that we should have minimum amendments.
So if you hire someone, a program person, to run some of these public service programs, that person leaves, now the ED has to take on that responsibility, and then you request to have the budget amended, or...
You wouldn't necessarily have to amend the budget in that case, because then that ED is actually acting as a program manager.
Right, okay.
So that's all you would have to, you might have to send a letter to say that you're acting in that, if that salary is different per hour, right?
Right, we've done
But
that
that's
in the
it.
past.
But that's it.
Another question, let me see if it comes back to me, and if I can just backtrack for a minute.
Yes.
On the facilities, let's say that you are renting a space,
Mm-hmm.
and so you're renting a space, you can't really say, because you're not the owner of that space, that you are now going to do some renovations and things like that. So does that fall under, because our multi-purpose room is a rented space, so that would not fall under the public service grant, that would fall under the facilities, even though it's not a renovation or infrastructure.
What are you doing with is you already have this access,
Yes.
you have this multi-purpose
Right, we have an
room.
multi-purpose room, and we've used our CDBG funds in the past for that, but now,
For that, meaning what, to pay the rent?
yes,
do
to
the what?
pay the rent for the facility. But now you have to pick, you can't apply for two different grant, you can't apply under two different buckets.
Yes, you can.
Oh, you can?
Yes.
All right, well, that's good to know. I was thinking that you can only apply for one.
We're just making sure it's the right service or project or
Okay.
whatever, we want public facilities funding be under public
Right.
facilities. We
And
want
then the
public
program
service.
person would be under public
Exactly.
service. Okay, thank you.
Okay? Anybody else?
Sorry, but
It's okay, Mr. Ford, we learn.
This seems to be a very competitive process this year, so I just want to be able to understand and hope other people understand. So let me ask the question. Will past performance of organizations and programs be a factor, as it obviously was a factor in HUD giving you recommendations and observations for the overall budget?
Yes. If you look on the last page of application, it gives you scores and ranking based on the following scoring system. 1, organization capacity is up to 15 points. Organizational financial management is up to 20 points. Proposed activity is up to 10 points. Service delivery up to 25 points. Leverage of other sources of funding that I mentioned earlier is up to 15 points. Previous experience is up to 10 points. Outcomes is 5 points. We also didn't want it to be a secret where you trying to figure out how the applications were graded. We wanted you to know that up front. So if you look on the last page, after the application checklist, it tells you the scoring system for public services. It's pretty similar. It's pretty much the same for public facilities as well. Okay? We want to be transparent, and we want to make sure everybody is aware of all what's happening and all the information up front. And we hope that this meeting, as well as the application, helps you with that. All right? Anybody else has any questions around the scoring? No? Okay. All right. So, based on what I've seen, the last set of applications, the primary concerns I have, making sure that you have a budget that is clear and not what I like to say top heavy, that you understand that your budget has to be direct to the service that you're providing. The other issue was it has to be a new and quantitative increase to current services. The other part that I saw was that the delivery, who are you serving? Who's the LMI, who's the beneficiary? Who's going to benefit from these services? Do they meet the LMI criteria? Those were the 3 primary challenges we saw in the old applications. Yes, ma'am.
Do you realize that for myself, I serve ex-offenders, and probably 75% or more of those ex-offenders that I'm serving are in community correction centers in the city of Harrisburg. They all come out with no jobs. When they come to me for services, they have no income.
I'm fine. I totally understand that. But all I'm saying, Ms. Juanita, is that we have to capture this stuff in the application. That has not always been clear and identified. I'm not talking about you. I'm saying this type of information is what you have to say in your application. Okay? And your narratives.
I understand that, but for some reason or another, the ex-offender population that are in the halfway back facilities seem to not count somewhere down the line.
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, because they're in the city of Harrisburg, but maybe not necessarily a city of Harrisburg resident. They may be from Lancaster.
I understand.
Coming from one of the state correctional facilities to be housed here in Harrisburg, and then they end up doing their home plan here.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're talking about making sure that they meet their eligibility guideline, they're always going to meet it because they have
Well, that's good for
no
you.
income. Okay.
That's good for you.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
That's good for your program. They're always going to meet it.
Okay.
You just have to make sure that when we come to do our quarterly monitoring, is that you have your policies and procedures and your documentation support that. That's all. That's it. But again, this purpose of this meeting was to make sure we were very clear to address some of the challenges that I saw on past applications, to make sure that we are clear about eligibility on the front end and accountability before you actually apply. Because what I don't want you to do is waste all this manpower and all this time, and then you don't get awarded because you're only funding the executive director's salaries or whatever. We just wanted to make sure that we were very clear on what was eligible to meet HUD's guidelines and to make sure that we share with the public so that we can start off with that information on the front end versus trying to fix it on the back end, okay? I don't have to say too much about public facilities, but I wanted, because I gave you the handout to share with you what type of projects are eligible. CDBG, you can come forward. Yes, ma'am.
Before you go, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. You got another question on public services, or?
One more.
Okay.
Fair Housing Council serves 3. So when you're looking at the application, and we're looking at individuals served maybe for the past year or so, do you want us to separate out those that may live outside the city, like Susquehanna Township or Lower Passing or something like that, when we're giving you the data on the individuals served?
Yes.
And then we have to, you know, assuming that we would be awarded a grant, we would have to identify those that the grant was used for that only lived in the city. So we have to keep that data separated
Yes.
at all times.
Yes.
Okay.
In your case, in Fair Housing's case, yes, because the way we have to report that beneficiary suggests so.
Okay.
Yes.
So only residents of Harrisburg when we're giving you data from past individuals.
Yes.
Okay.
What I would suggest, if you have multiple funding sources, you get Dauphin County, state, identify what you're spending each one on, and that's what I want this budget. So you're spending city money on 15, provide housing counseling service for residents of the city of Harrisburg. I want that data has to be clean and separated, okay? And your budget should suggest so. All right. Yes, sir.
On the, with respect to public facilities and improvements,
Yes.
first of all, the handout that I have is for a public services application kit. Is there a separate?
Yes, there is a public facilities. Make sure this gentleman has a public facilities and improvement.
If you don't have an application that you need, let me know what your name is.
And we can email it tonight.
Email it to you.
And we can email that tonight.
Excuse me.
Thank you, guys. So yes.
And then my second question would be, would a church or other place of worship be eligible as a public facility improvement to make improvements related to accessibility for people with disabilities?
Yes.
That is an eligible project.
Accessibility is one of the exceptions for public facilities, yes.
Even for a church or
That's
other
correct.
religious building?
Yes.
Okay. And accessibility to the area of worship within the church?
Yes. Accessibility is one of the only exceptions to churches, government buildings, etc. Yes.
All right, thank you.
So moving on to public facilities yet? Public service, anybody? All right. Public service, yes. Okay, you have it. And I'm sorry, sir. Come back to the mic one more time and state. Oh, she has your name. Okay, that's fine. We got it.
We got you, Chris.
All right, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Can you come forward if you don't mind?
Yeah, it's a quick question.
Yes.
I just want to know the importance of this. I think this could prove to be problematic for the organization that I'm representing, Harrisburg Area Learning Academy. The household served by racial breakdown, that's going to be tricky. How, in your experience,
we should talk about that separately. We send out a direct beneficiary form that we use as a tool to help people capture that information, but we should talk specifically about your program or project. I don't know, I'm not familiar.
But you'd have a tool for that?
Yes,
You
we have a
okay,
tool for that.
That's all I need to
Yeah.
know. Thank you.
We have what is called a direct services beneficiary form, short one-pager, tells you exactly what HUD wants to capture, and it's typically income, household numbers, and racial and ethnic data, if you have it, okay? Yes, sir.
So for new entities,
Yes.
my name is Camilo O'Brien of ZTK Improvements. So I'm reading this as financial statements of an organization that evidence financial wherewithal to undertake the activities, and then the weighted scoring system, the organizational financial management is one of the highest categories. So for new entities, how do you prove any of that?
I would suggest what, you can do it just like you would a basic business plan on projections, okay? And again, if you have any, if you have any financial documentation to support, that you bank with, you have a business account and things of that nature. You gotta, and you can talk about that in your narrative. The narrative is where you have an opportunity to explain why you may not have that. I'm a new entity, this is what I have, this is why I'm from. You can say it in words versus, having to have a lot of if you've never had an audit before, anything like that, okay? It gives you an opportunity to include your bylaws and supporting documentation, all right? Anybody else on public service? If you need, now I cannot go over applications with you and tell you how to fill them out and all that stuff. But if you need to meet with me or call me regarding a question such as, hi Franchon, I'm a new entity, I don't know what documentation I could use to support that I'm financially capable, you can call or email us on that, okay? If you have a sample budget and you say, Fran, can somebody look over my budget real quick? I can't give you details, but I can see if you've captured the information, all right? But again, I really suspect and hope that that won't be necessary after tonight. All right? Really quickly, you have the CDBG funding documentation on public facilities and improvement, but on the RFP, I'm gonna go there really quickly. It tells you, again, the project and activity qualifications. Some of the same criteria. It must benefit persons living in households with annual income below the 80% AMI. It must take place within the city of Harrisburg. It must benefit the residents of city of Harrisburg. You see how this goes, right? For facility improvement projects, the facility must be open to the public during normal business hours of operation. And access to the facility must be either free of charge or a nominal fee. That is exactly from the HUD reg. That is from the HUD reg directly. Some eligible activities include, again, this is a short list: acquisition, construction, reconstruction, rehabilitation, demolition, slum and blight removal, housing development, homeowner rehab. Again, new home development, that's home dollars. That's a different conversation. If this short list doesn't appeal to you, then go back to the bullet again. The facility, for facility improvement projects, the facility must be open to the public during normal business hours and free or nominal charge. I was hoping that by putting this information in an RFP, that it would make it very clear to help you identify what projects you want to on the public services side and what projects or projects you wanted to ask for public facilities and improvement dollars. Because typically we get them all in the same bunch. But because with public facilities, there's a different set of beneficiary information and deliverables. Yes, the eligibility, AMI and all that, but then there's not always race and ethnicity. You can actually say we're benefiting an area, we're benefiting a group. There's not necessarily always the race and ethnicity piece with public facilities and public improvement. On the national objectives, we had a bullet there where you can mark if you're preventing or eliminating slum or blight. On service delivery, the list is different. We want to know, are you asking for improvements to public facilities? Are you asking to improve open space? Are you providing some sort of affordable housing development? Are you asking to do homeowner rehab? It's a list, a different list of criteria, a different list of activities. And some of us have put in requested public service dollars under these categories, and it should be public facilities, public improvement request. All right? If accessibility, as I mentioned to Mr. Chris, accessibility is one of the exceptions to almost any building that is available, giving people access to a public facility, whether it's a church or not, government building. Accessibility is one of the exceptions to the public facilities and improvement rules. I would highly recommend, if you service a specific population, our target population, and you don't have accessible bathrooms, this is the time to consider this. If you find that people cannot get to your services because of you don't have a ramp, this is a time to look at that. Accessibility projects are highly encouraged. Okay? Anybody have questions around that one? Go ahead.
Do you have any clarity or any guidance around nominal fee?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
I sure do not.
Somewhere.
You gotta tell me and prove it to me.
In one of the prior documents, there was a census tract line. I don't see it in here. Was that removed?
Yeah, because almost every census tract in the city of Harrisburg is eligible.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I have a building.
You have a building
Open to the public.
open to the public.
I have a square footage part that's not complete.
That's
not complete.
not complete.
It has the walls and the windows, but
Okay. So you have a part of the building that is not complete.
Hold on. 3,200. Okay, it's 3,200 square feet is not complete.
3,200 square feet not complete.
And one of my thoughts is to use it for office space for for minority individuals trying to get their businesses started.
Like an incubator.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. So,
HUD likes micro enterprise.
so that's a good project.
It's an eligible project.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
It's an eligible project, okay? You guys are not going to get me to say whose project is good or bad. Not doing it. You know the scoring is listed, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
The scoring is listed, all right? It's an eligible project,
Okay.
all right? So, I again just wanted to thank you to allow me to have this opportunity to, one, introduce myself and my staff to you, two, to an opportunity to talk with you about what is considered eligible public service and public facilities improvement projects, and hope to give you guidance in completing the application. I'm encourage you to apply. Mr. Ford said earlier, it seems to be a very competitive process this year. It has been competitive, it's always competitive. Yes, it is. But most importantly, come on up, Gary. Gary, you had something you wanted to say? Come on up. I got them being reviewed by law right now, and I hope to have them out within the next 10 days. Okay? But we have you on the list to send to. All right? Any other new home developers, if you want that RFP, make sure you see us and identify it as such so we can get that out to you. All right? Yes.
I was in city council chambers when this was discussed. I just want to make sure that I have a clear understanding. You are in the process of submitting your overall request to HUD for, to be not the subrecipient, but the recipient. The city is the recipient.
That's already been submitted, correct?
Correct, okay. Now, did I understand the resolution to say that from that point on, the city would handle the contracting as it handles other contracting, and those criteria will be applied?
That's correct.
So there, no reflection?
Like, city council would still have, after the award, the process is to score the applications, to make a recommendation to both the administration and council based on those scoring, then get it approved, and work on the contract, and then get that all approved by those specific individual awardees, approved by council, yes.
Is there a dollar threshold on that? Administratively, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, there's a dollar threshold before it has to go.
Public services, we have $100,000 this year.
I'm just talking about the normal contracting process of the city. And is there a dollar threshold associated with that? In other words, if you're going to go contract.
Public services, CDBG funds, out of DBHD, all will have a contract that will go through both law, administration, law, and get approved by council.
Regardless, even if
Regardless,
it's small dollars.
even if it's $5,000, yes. All right? If there's no other questions, I want to thank you once again for attending. Thank you very much. We hope not to have a mandatory meeting in the future, but thank you for coming. I look forward to reviewing your applications and having them scored. Good night, everybody.
Good night.